Hello, everyone. Welcome to Somerford Associates podcasts. This series that we're doing is about women in tech, where I have the privilege to speak to some leaders of the industry who happen to be women. And today I'm speaking to Kathryn Cardose. Welcome, Kathryn.
Thank you very much for inviting me to join you on this. Very much looking forward to it.
It's my idea that we need more role models who are women in the tech industry. And what would be nice is if we don't talk about being women per se, we talk about our work. And that would be a great way to role model what it's like for us in this industry. So does that sound like a good plan?
It does. I sense there might be a little bit of creeping about some of the challenges, but yeah, absolutely, I'm happy with that.
Brilliant. Thank you. So, well, let's just start with you. How do you get to where you are? And indeed, what is your role and where are you?
So I'm currently at Virgin Money. I'm the senior manager and I look after the cybersecurity operations and I sit within the CIO department, which is really cool. And I've been here for a year and about 2 weeks, if I'm going to be really precise.
That's very precise.
So how did I get here?
Yeah.
That's the biggest question, isn't it? So I'll do a bit of a potted history, but don't worry about spoiling my flow at all. Feel free to chip in with any questions. So I've always been a bit of a technology tinkerer, I suppose you could say. Always fascinated by how things work from being a child, really. I was the one to show family how to use the Betamax video and program it so you could record at a particular time and all that sort of thing, much to the amazement and amusement of the household, given that I was probably not much more than a toddler at the time. I know that doesn't really show much comparison to coding and such like and what I'm doing today, but I think some of the curiosity that I had certainly started from a very, very young age. So that was me tinkering on. Was always a bit jealous of my uncle who was getting all the technology that he asked for, Commodore 64, Spectrum Sinclair, etc. And he never really played with it. I did, and that meant that I guess I got the benefit of just getting what a kid should get and also managing to steal his toys too. So that was fun. And actually I remember dashing home from school. I used to come home for lunches and I would set off the tape player so I could load my game ready for us coming in that night. So yeah, it almost, you just think about how games work now and that you don't have to wait, you just turn it on and you don't have to pause it and leave it on overnight in case you lose your position in the game. It's all on memory card.
But back in the day, you really had to prep for your gaming sessions.
Occasion, wasn't it?
Definitely.
So yeah, that was the very, very early days, I guess. And then school, did GCSE IT, which was mainly how to use Excel and do mail merge, but it felt really progressive at the time. Left school, went to college, and I was gasping to continue doing computing, and I wanted to do computing A level, but when I went to the open evening there and put my options in, etc., I was told that girls don't do computing, which was...
Oh, that's so shocking that you were actually frankly told that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, girls don't do that. I felt pretty weirded out by like, oh, am I weird for wanting to do it? What's that about? So that, I guess, was the first time that I noticed, in some ways, that things were different depending on who you are, where you are, and what you want to do. So I didn't end up doing it, which is bonkers. I think if I was in that position now, I'd absolutely tell them to go and shove it. And that there's no such thing, etc., etc. And I remember hanging out in the computer suite there and looking over to a full class of males, funny enough, and there was this tiny little woman who was the teacher. So it was...
Even more bonkers.
Yeah, exactly. And I often wonder if she knew that was the sort of chat that was going around, because it didn't come from her, it came from the people that were running open evenings and like the signing on sessions and so on. absolutely crazy. I'd love to see if she's still around now, and just if I spotted her on the high street or something, just sort of went, yeah, you used to do that teaching stuff. Yeah, did you know about this? Because that was bonkers. So I used to crane my ear and neck and try and listen into what she was teaching them. And I guess I kind of found my own way after that. So I went on to study law at university. And I probably should have spent more time looking at the legal books when actually I was teaching myself how to code, how to publish websites, etc. So, yeah, the signs were absolutely there. So as soon as I left university, hopped into Northern Rock as a data entry person, or a mortgage clerk, I think it might have been called at the time. And I was there for about a year. And as soon as I could, I was applying for jobs in IT, and thankfully managed to get one. And I did first, second line support, the sort of help desky stuff that I think is a really good place to start in IT, and wherever you end up is usually a really good.
It's a good baseline, yeah. I mean, some of the professional services guys who were in my team started that way, and it gives you a really good beginning, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's a really tough job as well. I think if you haven't gone through that route, it's quite easy to go, well, they don't know everything. You know, well, how can they? You've got to know a wafer thin amount about a lot of things, and know how to handle it, where to go, do the triage, assess the priority, etc., etc. So I spent quite a few years there, and then I was starting to think, and this was when there was the financial crash in 2008. And I was thinking I really should be thinking about how I make my skills more transferable, because it was quite based on like where I was working, the ways that we'd run things and do things and fix things. It was quite bespoke applications. And at the time I didn't quite feel that it was transferable. But I guess back then I probably didn't appreciate how transferable your skills can be. And I think that's a really important thing to remember in your career. It's not just about what you're doing here and now, but what your next step might look like, or what the next 3 or 5 years looks like. But yeah, I was looking for that specialism, and I was trying to kind of find some tenuous link between having a law degree and technology. And weirdly enough, the tenuous link was cybersecurity for me. Would you say there's a link there?
Definitely, because in cybersecurity, you have to be, you're about keeping it legal, and there's governance that you have to apply to. So there is a link there. I could see that. It's just law in computing world.
So yeah, I mean, I've gained a lot of skills about reason. It sounds kind of basic, but reasoning, seeing things from both sides. I suppose you taught. Part of the degree I did was they started doing what they called the LPC course, which is basically legal practice. So at Northumbria Uni, they baked that into the degree, whether or not you chose to extend the degree out to cover that, or just whether you went with the normal 3-year approach. And I went with the 3-year approach, but from pretty much second year, you had the opportunity to go into a courtroom that they had, be filmed, interviewing your client, and also standing up in court and giving like your testimony and your challenges and etc. And it was really good in terms of that reflective point and communication approach, and being very precise in your language and things like that. So I did gain a lot from that, which I think is massively transferable into any job really. And I guess
any corporate world.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of those management courses you go on where you might be videoed or you might be given feedback from 360 degrees, then it's good to have practiced that in a bit of a safer environment, I guess. But yeah, I mean, It was really cool. Some of the opportunities that I had when I was there. But as I say, I focused more on what I could learn with technology than what I did actually learning about statutes and such like. But there's some cool stuff that I definitely retained from it. So yeah, cybersecurity was the specialism of choice that I wanted to go with, and as luck would have it, a role came up. I sort of cringe when I think of the interview that I gave So I knew absolutely nothing about security apart from least privilege access and making sure you had a strong password, which is so that was it. And basically, I've never looked back since taking that role, and I've been in it 8.5 years now. And I definitely think I've found my calling. It's almost like the hobby side of things have turned into a career, which is brilliant. And I never get bored of it at all. There's always something new to learn. There's a new challenge that's around the corner. There's a new exploit. There's a new bit of technology to go with it, and yeah, quite amazing. I feel very privileged to be in this industry, and particularly about the network that's out there and the community. It's extremely supportive. Again, when you're looking for how do you solve a problem, like insert whatever today's problem is, there's always someone out there, whether it be in your internal network, in the community, in various forums that are out there as well, like ISC Squared, OWASP, DEF CON, etc. There's always things around you that you can draw upon, knowledge, expertise, and it's quite a sharing and supportive community, which is brilliant. Really happy to be part of it, and I want to give some of that back as well.
That's so interesting that once you get to this kind of cybersecurity world, people who are on this side are really helping each other out, and that you've got access to that kind of kind network that I think a lot of us really, really want to find in our roles. It's great.
Absolutely, and it keeps me motivated from a massive degree, really. So if I think about me as a kid wanting to learn stuff, there was a load of resources out there on the internet. It was more books, I guess, than internet at the time, but the community's out there. I learned a lot of things very quickly through doing it that way. Also thinking about how you steer yourself in your career, what sort of certifications you want to look at. Have you had a problem like this before? And someone will say, yeah, and this really didn't work. I haven't got an answer, but learning from someone else's mistakes is as valuable as being told exactly how to do something. Yeah. And I think we're really blessed. So as I say, if I think about from being a kid trying to pick things up, maybe not having the privileges of having a massively technical family or friends or area where I grew up, again, knowing that there's that community out there and it's a lot more accessible now is absolutely amazing. And I think STEM, from a careers perspective, is really important. I could wax lyrical actually about the STEM ambassadorship. I think that's an amazing thing, and we can bring so much more.
I'm really keen on STEM and getting people into this area because cybersecurity as well is cutting edge, and every single company needs it. So if you're wanting job security, it's definitely something that's going to be here for, well, I presume forever, in some way, shape, or form. And you're innovating all the time. So you've reflected on some new things and new challenges. So there's sometimes new exploits, or that, I guess, is people being able to hack into a corporate person's system. There's new technologies to deal with those, always evolving. So what sort of challenges are you having in your role at the moment?
Really good question. I think there's a lot of talk, isn't there, out there in the community about how working from home and the pandemic and everything that's been not necessarily a new challenge, but a slightly a gear change on those challenges.
Accelerated.
Yeah, it really has. And I remember roughly probably this time last year, or maybe about in April or May last year, there was this picture going about on LinkedIn and Twitter and all the usual socials about what's the biggest thing that's changed or improved the technology and way of working for a company. Is it A, your CFO, B, your CEO, C, your CTO or your CIO, or is it D, COVID-19? And I think we can all agree that COVID-19's really put the foot on the gas on transforming how we work, making things a little bit more flexible, not just in the working pattern, but how we can safely work from home, how we can safely adapt pretty quickly. Some organisations were able to do it overnight, some did it in weeks, months, but if you'd had said maybe in 2019, how do you deal with this sort of scenario happening from a crisis management perspective and business continuity, I think everyone would be sort of tearing their hair out and saying, oh, I don't know. I don't think we could do this overnight. I don't think we could make it work in that period of time. And also just thinking about when we used to do planning for business continuity and crisis management, if you'd put a pandemic in on the list of things to test against, it's not necessarily the most exciting thing to look at compared to, say, I don't know, fire, flood, loss of data center or something like that. But it's amazing. I think that there's been a lot of testing of those processes, and it's amazing to see what the industry's achieved. So that's one of the challenges.
And you were in your role during that time?
Well, yeah, just been in the bank 3 weeks, I guess, when I was, which was interesting. Yeah. So I mean, just starting the role, it was something that was going on in the world, and it wasn't massively impacting on what we do day in, day out. And I think there was a bit of complacency at a global level about what that means. But yeah, so I'd been in the role, as I say, around about 3 weeks. Part of my team was in Glasgow. Part of it was in Newcastle. So the Newcastle bit was very easy because that was me onboarding there. I had a train ticket and everything booked to go up and meet my colleagues up north, and sadly COVID put an end to that. And being able to network and build what your stakeholder network looks like, introduce yourself to people, learn a bit more about how different processes work and what technologies are in place, etc., is very straightforward and easy when you've got face-to-face time and you can sort of have that conversation flow, whereas it's not quite the same, is it, when it's virtual?
No. And you have to kind of fix a time to speak to one another, or I don't know. Yeah.
That spontaneity's gone, isn't it? And those corridor conversations, or when you go to make a cup of tea and someone's there and you might have an introduction, or you might just have that off-the-cuff chat, and then it turns into, actually, I've got a problem with this. I'm working on this, and this isn't going quite well. I might need to speak to your guys, and then you've got that, 5 minutes, and you've solved something. Whereas, you've got to plan it in, and you don't want to just spring up because you can't tell how busy that person is, etc.
No, and you can't see if they're stressed. Yeah, that's challenging. So 3 weeks in, and you have to deal with the pandemic and meet all of your team, or half of your team that you hadn't met before.
Absolutely, yeah. It was. It felt a bit scary, I guess, at times, and that settling in feeling probably took a bit longer to pass. But
yeah,
I did have the benefit of that. I used to work for Virgin Money back in 2018, so I knew a lot of the Gosforth folks. But what had happened since leaving is that the bank had been bought out by Clydesdale Bank, and suddenly it wasn't just about the things and processes that I knew. So that was a bit tricky, but thank God for Teams. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
Definitely a culture change as well, because video chat wasn't really natural and normal, was it? You definitely do the voice stuff, but it's very different to face-to-face, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I've been lucky that I've been in places where it's remote working was quite the norm beforehand, but to get used to that kind of culture, I think in larger organisations it must have been massively transformational. But actually, being a new person kind of probably helped as well for that acceleration of making everyone work from home and securely, because you had the ability to ask the questions that perhaps if you'd been in post for a while, you'd feel embarrassed about asking.
Yeah, you're right, actually. And I had the new girl excuse, that's for sure. So that was quite good.
And now you've sort of, we've kind of settled into how we're going to be working partly from home, partly away. Are there any new kind of exploits that you're dealing with, or any new technologies that you're kind of looking at, or choosing between, or that sort of thing?
Yeah, there's plenty going on in that space. So I guess following on from new ways of working and how we make sure we maintain our controls, etc. Some of the things that come with walking into an office or a place of work, you've got a lot of physical security controls, and you're very aware of, you've got your work outfit on. That's one thing. That gives you a sense of where you are and what your purpose is and where you're going. You've got your desk set up and it's clear desk policy, so you're very careful about what information you've got at your fingertips and what you're doing with it. You lock your laptop or your PC when you get up and walk away, or you're carrying that laptop with you wherever you go. It's just a bit different, isn't it, sitting at home? So I think fundamentally the way that you secure an endpoint doesn't change massively. It's just the environment that you're in. So I guess situational awareness is quite important. I'm sure not many folks have had co-workers which are between the ages of 0 and 18 before, that they've had to navigate around their homework environment. If you're sitting by a window and you're talking about something that is quite a sensitive project or market sensitive data, it's hot in the summer, you've opened the window, suddenly whoever's out there in the street might have heard what you're talking about. There's a lot of things that change about how we position ourselves and how we conduct our business. So some of it, the technology was already there, the endpoint controls are already there. It doesn't change too much. The difference is about, I guess, how you conduct yourself and where you're sitting, and what your work environment is like.
Yeah, so you don't have to just think about those are incredibly people-y sort of things around, and the endpoints was less of the challenge, the technology part of it.
Absolutely. So looking at technologies that can help with that, a lot of it, as you say, is sort of people-based and making sure that it's easy for people to remember that when they're at home and they're in front of their laptop, that they're still at work, and how that changes. I could be sitting here with the window wide open. I could have, if I was in a shared house, for example, there could be another 4 companies sitting within seconds of where I am, and no one really checks who their flatmates work for. It's not exactly a selection choice when you're finding somewhere to live, and whether that's going to conflict with what you do. There's a whole world of things that come with that, and there's only so much technology can do with it. But there's also a bit about looking about how our data loss tools are dealing with that, and do we need to think about how we do things differently, etc. So there's a whole bunch of challenges that come with that, but maybe not as crazily different as you'd think, when you would maybe have an organisation that says you can't work from home because, and it's all about being in the same physical location. So there's the pros and cons that come with that.
Yeah.
But it is a big game change, and I think the flexibility that it gives people with caring responsibilities, whether it be older parents, whether it be children, whether it be siblings, whatever it is, it's really leveled the playing field, and something else that I think is really good to come out of it.
Yeah, I mean, and that for a Women in Tech podcast, it's really, really key. In fact, Women in Work podcast, the mostly, sweeping statement, it's women who have caring responsibilities in general. So it really has leveled the playing field quite a lot.
Hugely, yeah. And also about the position of, I suppose, the country, as in the UK. So you get a whole load of great jobs in London, and it's never been a case of you can be 100% remote, or the areas of the country which really have a real tech beating heart. Geographical location's not half as important as it used to be. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of this year, 2021, plays out in terms of whether it changes much or not.
Yeah.
Because companies have invested in real estate. If you look at Canary Wharf at the moment and some of the headlines that come out of there, it feels less necessary, I guess, and that's quite an interesting challenge, I guess, that the guys making lots and lots of money out of having that real estate maybe didn't foresee coming. But yeah, I think it's a really good thing, and I'm very, very much proud of where I live, where I come from. And one of my kind of passion projects around that is making sure that, Newcastle as an area, or the northeast of the region, isn't overlooked, because it's not Leeds, it's not Manchester, it's not London. And also about up north as well. There's some really, really cool stuff happening in Glasgow, Edinburgh, and further afield. So I'm pleased that geographical challenges is reduced as well. But that's not really technology, but it is.
But it just shows in your role at the moment that you're not just thinking about the technologies. You really have to think about the people who you've got in your team, where you're hiring from. You're in a position where it really is, though it's in technology and it's cybersecurity, you still have to think about all of the people side as well.
Absolutely, and it sounds really corny, and I guess it is, but it's 100% true, is that people, whether or not they're in your team or in the cybersecurity team, people are very much, if you train them in the right way and give them the right awareness, they are your first line of defence no matter what. As you mentioned before, the threat changes so quickly, the methods in which they're exercised, different threat vectors that change, come and go. It's always going to be, the human's going to always be the weakest link. We're programmed as people to trust, and that humankind element is some of the footholds that the attackers really take a lend of. And then it's almost your technology controls are the compensating ones. And in terms of challenges, and I think the COVID aspect, going back to your question, I guess, is business email compromise and phishing. That's one of the things that I think the industry is really seeing an uptick in. It's kind of easy to do it that way, and you cast your net wide as an attacker. You might get a few hooks, you might not, but there's some really convincing ways to get on board with government updates. Go and get, click here to get your vaccine.
Yeah, they can really key into your fears around COVID and some urgency as well. And we have a really great security officer. I think he used to be in charge of a bank security as well, and now we've got him part-time on his retirement. Anyway, he keeps us on our toes with this thing called Know Before, which kind of tests you. And we have fake phishing, presumably with real phishing, because everyone attacks everyone. So we get tested all the time with these fake phishing emails as well. Do you basically have a lot of attacks because you're such a large bank? Is it quite an obvious target?
I think I don't think anyone's less targeted at the moment. If you think about across the industry as well, our financial services peers are getting the same sort of approach. You'll get your something's changed and working from home type thing. You'll get just the really standard fish in terms of insert board level name.
Yeah.
I need you to contact me quickly about X, and it might be completely bland or just something that will sound like it's feasible and it's happening. Money needs to be transferred out, etc., etc. And we've seen it for, it's one of the oldest tricks in the book. But I guess just the way they dress it up, that changes things. I think there's an increase, as I say, generally, and we're not immune to it at all, in just your general fish approach. So something's happening, or you need to work from home. We need to change your technology profile, or the vaccines are coming because you work in this place. Then you can click on this and you can book in a vaccine as soon as possible, etc. All of those things, absolute textbook. It's just the method in which they're doing it that gets a little bit smarter. Spoofing email addresses, making links look like they're friendly when they're not. I think the world and their wife is ordering Amazon just to keep themselves entertained during this time where you can do very little other than watch TV streaming service and go for a walk. It's it's nice to have someone to knock on your door, isn't it, with some presents for yourself. So I think, we're seeing more and more in the Amazon space as well. It's nothing too different. It's just more of the same and more targeted in terms of this is what people are doing. Human behaviour is, I think, pretty predictable at the moment. These are the things that, when you say, did you have a nice weekend? And they go, yeah, I went for a walk. Brilliant.
I know. What did you do? Nothing. Yeah. Okay.
Have you watched this on Netflix? Or, it's the same sort of conversations, isn't it? So it's very easy to profile your average human being, I think, to be more targeted. So that's definitely one thing.
Yeah.
In amongst other technology stuff that's going on at the moment, we've got the two companies merging together, and I need to review what we've got where. Is it working? Does it work across both banks? All of those things in the security space where, it's about making sure that you've got the best out of mainly what you've got. There's a lot of challenges out there in terms of budgets, etc. The world at large is suffering financially, so no one's immune from that. I think perhaps apart from Mr. Amazon, because business is booming, or Netflix, or
those companies that we just mentioned, but everyone else is challenged financially. So you're having a merger as well. So you not only have to sort out that business as usual and that increase of threats to make sure you stay secure, you're also working out how you're going to work together as a new blended company. That's challenging time.
Yeah, I mean, lots to look at, lots to think about, how we approach things, making sure that we do get the best out of what we've got. I think, again, if you talk to anyone in the industry and you think about how security's matured, how companies are structured, whether it be they've not had a dedicated security department, now they have. Is that technology based or is it policy based? There's a whole load of things that have happened over the past, certainly the 8.5 years I've been part of it. There's always been that challenge, and I suppose early days of my career I thought everyone's got this sorted, but actually because it's such an ever-changing area, everyone's doing the best they can to get it right and stay ahead of the curve as much as possible, or at least be in a position where you can react well to whatever the threat surface looks like.
Yeah, it's a really fast-changing place. And now, I suppose one of the main trends I've noticed is that security isn't kind of like an afterthought or thought of as a blocker. It's more, it has to be kind of put into whatever you design all the way through, any business process, anything.
Absolutely agree. And I think it's really good to have seen that evolution. I don't think we're anywhere near hitting perfect on it. Will we ever be? And something you said earlier on about it's a safe place to be for a role. And I'd kind of like to think that in the next sort of 10 to 15 years, security shouldn't be a separate role anymore. It should be baked in as part of just what, if you're a developer, it's what you do from day one, and it's baked in, as you say, from the start. But also that it becomes just part of everyone's everyday psyche. And you would maybe have a security team as a bit of a conscience point rather than a separate area that definitely has to feed in your functional requirements and non-functional requirements into a project or a platform.
That's a really interesting change of culture that would be in your company. So if you became more of the educator to everyone about how security fits into all of their roles, and then you're the checkpoint on top saying, how is it working? Is it working okay?
Yeah, I think that would be a sign of success in terms of some of the things that, just plucking one out of the air, but GDPR saying that you should build security in from the start, because it's not specific to financial services or a particular sector, and everyone's impacted by it, the regulation, that kind of helps foster that approach. And if you look at sort of older companies who are pretty huge and they've always had to build that team in around it, and then you look at a startup or one of, say, the newer financial services companies, it seems that it's more integrated as just part of everyone's role, which I think is interesting. So yeah, I think if everyone gets on board with it, then it should be something that is almost in everyone's kit bag, and it's part of just your everyday way of thinking. However, whatever platform role you're in, or developer, or whichever area you sit in, you can't always be focused on every aspect of what brilliant looks like. You might be able to, and that would be awesome, but I think there's a reality check in my panacea and nirvana of what the world might look like in sort of 10, 15 years. That, yeah, you've got to have your specialisms and really focus in on these things, and is it actually feasible to get in that space? But I'd like to see that happen.
It would be great, but it would also release the real security experts like yourself to really think about the new threats coming along, and can be a bit more forward thinking and not be bogged down on the day-to-day stuff, because everyone does the day-to-day. It would make your job much easier if everyone could do that.
Yeah, there you go. There's a pledge for everyone who's listening, potentially. But yeah, how about wait until I'm just about to retire when that happens, so I can sort of be happy as opposed to worry about my role.
Feedback again on the podcast 10 years time. How did that work? Who knows? So we might have people listening who are already in tech, and we also might have people listening who are thinking, is tech for me? Let's assume they're women. Where have you got any sort of next steps for them?
Absolutely. So I guess some of my story as to how I got here kind of plays into some of that, and some of the big tips, I suppose. And what I would say is something that everyone should consider is, if you want something, or something seems interesting and you want to chase it, but you maybe don't feel like you've got the tools or the background to get there, is how you plan your steps into it, rather than just think, I can't do it. Technology isn't just about what is sometimes portrayed as, yeah, you've got to learn how to code, or you've got to be a network specialist, or you've got to be this, that, or the other. It's not necessarily always about that in technology. If you think about the amount of jobs that are out there, or that set up a technology function, there's anything from your project support people who may not be 100% tech savvy, but they'll know how to structure a project or how to deliver something. That's really important, because those roles allow the techies to get on and do what they need to do from that perspective, but you get the benefit of being around it and maybe absorb some of that. So you don't have to be, the ready-formed article to get into technology. It's about, I think for me, and particularly from a security perspective, it's back to that point on transferable skills. So are you curious as to how things work? Are you able to look at things from a different angle to then sort of reverse engineer how something might work, and then think about compensating controls and how you could manage threats, etc. I think those sort of skills, analytical, problem solving, curiosity, as I say, massive thing. If you've got those sorts of things, then I think you can train them into being what you might think is that technology person that you think you want to be, but you don't know how you get there.
Yeah.
Back to the community piece as well. There's so much out there now, and almost in some ways there's too much if you know where to find it. So again, from a sort of women in tech perspective, there's Tech Mums, there's the Ladies Hacking Society, of which me and Kimberly Hendry co-founded the Northeast Ladies Hacking Society, which is a local chapter, but not just for local people, it's great when it comes to COVID times, where we do it online, so you could be sitting on the other side of the world, if it works in your time zone, to come along to one of our chapter meetings. We've got them across the UK as well. It started with Eliza May Austin, who kicked this off in London. So we've got a London, Cheltenham, Glasgow, North East. I think that's all we've got at the moment. We had a Norwich arm as well, but so much out there in terms of support and how to get there. And the Ladies Hacking Society ethos is basically come along and learn. if you can share anything that, if you're already in the industry, you can develop your skills further. You could offer yourself as a mentor to people who are just starting out. You can come along and share anything. At the moment, we're running a program across all the chapters to deliver the OWASP Top 10 training using some basic hacking tools that are out there. And it's not about being the big bad hackers. It's about actually learning how we can test our systems to make sure that they are strong and secure, and we can preempt some bugs out there which might cause some of the vulnerabilities.
Know your enemy.
Exactly. So there's a load of things that we do there. It's a brilliant, really, really good bunch, and really supportive, great community to be part of.
Awesome.
Although it is ladies hacking society, so we do encourage that it is mainly females that sign up, but males aren't excluded by any means at all. The only thing that we do ask is that if you're a male, you bring something to the table. So in terms of, is there knowledge you can share? Can you do a presentation to show something off? Or can you offer mentor opportunities and things like that? So really good community feel. Excellent place.
Oh, thanks, Kathryn. Well, what I'll do is I'll make sure on all of the kind of web pages that we have on this, we put a link to the Ladies Hacking Society, because that sounds like a good bit of community for someone who's interested to go in, and also for people who are already here and want to encourage more women.
Yeah, definitely. We've got all levels there, and it's just really good. There's literally no such thing as a stupid question or feeling that you're going to join and be out of your depth or anything like that. It's very much a supportive and growth environment for anyone who wants to get involved. So yeah,
you've sold it to me. I'm going to join up now anyway.
So we've got a load of good stuff coming up, so yeah, check the website.
Awesome, will do. Oh, Kathryn, it's been really lovely to speak to you, and it's been very interesting to hear about your role and the sort of things that you're dealing with at the moment. So thank you very much for sharing.
No problem. It's been a pleasure and great to speak with you.
Thanks for listening to the Somerford Associates podcast. I'm exploring technical topics that you are grappling with at the moment. So get in touch if you have any questions or areas you're interested in. So thanks for listening. Goodbye.